views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, inflation, recession, interest rate hikes. These economic lingos, well, they may resonate with you and may sometimes even overwhelm you. Coming up on this edition of Perspectives, we go front and center, breaking it all down for you. Our guest has a successful financial literacy program for kids and has written a book called $Daren Millionaire, Extraordinaire. Well, we'll tell you all about it coming up next on Perspectives with yours truly, Daren Jaime.
What's on your mind? Let 'em know. Express what's on your mind. What's on your mind?
Let 'em know. Anything relevant to life, you bring it to the table. Whether you make a move solo or a movement with a stable. No fables, you speak on your decisions. Cause in the long run, it's your voice, your views, your vision. Keeping it real with many messages for you to know. This ain't radio, but DJ runs the show. Entertainment, he rocks it. Politics, he locks it. The host with the most would handle any topic. Don't forget to share your perspective with shines of light. Cause it might make a difference in someone else's life.
Make a difference in someone's life. Express what's in your heart and your mind. Share your perspective.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Perspectives. I am Daren Jaime. And as always, you can join us here on Perspectives every week here on Bronx Native Channel 67. We invite you to stay connected to us on our social media platforms. Our social media platform at BronxNet is BronxNet TV. If you're looking to reach me personally, well, you can do that. Our Facebook professional page, Daren C. Jaime. And then also, if you're looking on Instagram and Twitter, hit me up on DC Jaime23. There you can get some information as well as some inspiration. Well, coming up on today's show, we talk about financial literacy, young people, how it all comes together. My guest today believes that literacy is the foundation for a successful life, and he also promotes it with humor as well as enthusiasm. Now, he's an entrepreneur, an author, and also a literacy advocate. His current book, $Daren Millionaire, Extraordinaire, has been featured on a variety of programs, and he also joins us now sharing about that, his new project, as well as providing us some financial literacy. We're pleased to have welcoming to Perspectives, Mr. Allan Jackson. And Ty, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
It's good to have you. Good to have you at a time like this. I think everybody is really trying to reel and deal in the area of how do I make it economically? And you got to have some sort of an economic mindset. But for you, this isn't just the moment. This is what you've been doing for a long period of time. So how did you come about being involved in financial literacy?
Well, to be perfectly honest, it all transpired from a question from my son. When he was 8 years old, he asked me a question that changed my life. And he said, "Dad, can we open up a lemonade stand?" And so we did. And he made $50 in 3 hours selling lemonade and said, "Dad, what am I going to do with this $50? And honestly, at the moment, I wasn't sure. So I went to my local bookstore to try to find a book to teach my son about money. And I noticed two things is that one, there are so few books teaching kids about money and almost no books featuring a young Black protagonist that look like my son. So I figured somebody needs to do something about this. And I figured maybe that somebody was me. I went home. The name Danny Dollar just popped into my head. I went home, started typing. 10 years later, I've sold over 120,000 copies of Danny Dollar. It's been turned into a financial literacy program that's now being run by the Federal Reserve. And it's been kind of something of a phenomenon.
So something you kind of like literally stumbled upon, but you really wanted to just, help your son out. But for you prior to this, how involved were you in the economic landscape?
Not at all. I was a sales representative for Allied Waste, which is a trash removal service company. And I knew nothing more than what your average person was. I mean, I had, a savings account and a 401k and a few stocks here and there, but nothing of great significance. But when I saw that there was such a void for young people, and really thinking back as a young person myself, living in a world of lack as a kid growing up in the Bronx and the projects, I just saw an opportunity to maybe create a form and a character to teach kids about financial literacy, because just like you stated when you opened her up earlier, it's so vital, especially right now, for us all to know about finance and entrepreneurship, and to start early in any facet in life is really important. So those two things just kind of came together, and writing reading was always very important to me. And so I thought maybe I could be on the opposite side of that and become a writer. And somehow or another, it's kind of worked out.
So on one side, you're teaching your son education, and then you had to go in the education game yourself because you had to become
100.
a little bit more in the game of financial literacy. How long did it take for you to get a grasp about literacy and being able to pass that on to others?
Yeah, it took me a good solid year of just really studying and buckling down and being able to be an advocate for not just financial literacy, but literacy in general. I never aspired to write a book, much less a best-selling book. And so, it took a little bit of time, effort, and energy, but I wanted to make sure that this book, Danny Dollar, was very simple, not a lot of jargon, not a lot of, over the top explanations on something, just something that your average 6, 7, 8-year-old kid could understand, which works for me because as a novice in the world of finance, it's just important for me to equally learn as simplistically as a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid. In fact, when I talk to people, like, if you can't explain it to me like you explain it to a 6-year-old, then, we're just making it too complicated. So yeah, it took me a good solid year, and by no means I would never consider myself an expert in the world of finance. But I think that I'm an expert in the way to engage kids and get them to read and appreciate the joys and power of reading.
So what's it done for your son? I mean, obviously you start out by helping him and trying to get him with this little lemonade stand that actually blossoms out into a book. And now you got this book 120,000 copies later. And he saw this from it being an inception and a baby to where it is today. What's this conversation like with you today?
Yeah, he's 22 now, and he is a chef, an executive chef in a restaurant. But I tell you what, it's done long term, introducing him to the concept of finance early. He's a much better investor than I am, a much more adventurous investor, which I love, and he really respects the power of money. He's way ahead of the game where I was at this stage in life as far as saving and investing and just money management in general. So I'm really, really proud of that. And the fact that this book is helping, I think, hundreds, if not maybe even millions of children around the world to discover the exact same thing, the power of finance and entrepreneurship is just incredibly gratifying, but proof positive that when we expose our children to anything, they'll gravitate to it, negative or positive. And that includes money. I mean, that is the one commonality that every single person in this country, if not in the world, has to have some, or at least should have some basic understanding of how money works. There's really, outside of our health, no greater dictator to our quality of life than financial literacy. So I'm proud to be able to have created a character that kids can see themselves as and gravitate to empower themselves about finance and entrepreneurship.
What was the big aha moment for you when you were doing this? I mean, I know you certainly ran across a lot of, wow, this is this. But what was the big aha moment when you were in the process of putting this all together?
There were several, to be perfectly honest. The first one is that I submitted this manuscript to 147 different agents and was rejected by every one. So that aha moment told me a little bit about the lack of diversity within children's books, and I don't think that the agents got it. Much later, here was a Black kid teaching kids about money. I think that was something that maybe was either over their head or maybe just something that they wanted to felt might have been hands off. The other thing is that a lot of children honestly just don't like to read. And I think a lot because, especially children of color, because they're accustomed to seeing themselves usually in only historical or cultural ways, they don't see them as, contemporaries. They see, slavery and segregation and Diary of a Wimpy. Jackie Robinson's and Rosa Parks's as far as books and literature is concerned. And I'm not saying those books aren't relative. They are very important. But I think children learn appreciate reading through the way of joy, not necessarily the way of academia or learning. Kids want to read for fun, or at least should read for fun. I think that's the gateway. And there were so few books with children of color as a protagonist that were just fun, that really any kid could read and really gravitate to. The other thing was very personal. I didn't know that I had a gift inside of me of wanting to read. So I didn't get the idea to write a book at the age until 40. And at 40, most of us are just kind of on cruise control of whatever it is we're doing. But I had to completely reinvent myself in a field that I had no experience in whatsoever. But I've been able to sell over 140,000 copies of my books overall. I get to tour the country talking to children about literacy and financial literacy. So there's a lot of different aha moments that I had along the way. Not to mention, I love it. I love doing this. I can't imagine doing anything else. And there's nothing more gratifying than seeing a young child pick up my book, read it, love it, be inspired by it, and then have very often those children will say, I didn't like reading before, but now I read your books and they've inspired me to read. And I don't, like I said, I don't think there's outside of financial literacy that I say that I think is a great denominator for our quality of life. Reading is also such a great catalyst for moving us forward as people to become better versions of ourselves. So there really was a lot of personal aha moments that I had for myself, but I couldn't express greater how much I love what I do.
But let's keep it honest and let's keep it 100. When we talk about financial literacy amongst African Americans and communities of color, that simply goes to the bottom of the list sometimes. But when we look in white culture, we understand the kids are taught finances at an early age, introduced to stocks at an early age, introduced to savings at an early age, and many times are the beneficiaries of legacy funding from parents, grandparents, and the like. But when it comes to us, there's this struggle to survive, and sometimes financial literacy is the last thing that we come into contact with. Either we're in debt too much or we get in very late in the game.
It's sadly accurate and true, and but we have to sever that somewhere. And it's up to us as parents to do a better job of revealing the power of entrepreneurship and finance to our children at an early age. And I think very often we don't, because we're not knowledgeable about it ourselves. And so it's hard for us to humble ourselves to teach our children about something that we don't even know about. So I think that's why these books are important, because they are the conversation that I wish I had as a kid. My mother had me at 15 years old. She knew nothing about money. And so she couldn't pass that knowledge down to me because she had no knowledge of it. So if I had had a book like Danny Dollar that would have introduced me to this concept and let me know that, wow, I can make my own money today. I can open up a lemonade stand. I can run errands for my neighbors. I can save for myself and think about towards my future. Because who among us doesn't want to be prosperous? Even every kid. I mean, you and I as kids, we all used to see like a really nice car and go, that's my car. That's my car. Like, I remember doing that, but no concept of what it took to actually get that car, so to have a book that's able to like give us a sense of financial independence that says, yes, wow, I want that car. And if I'm able to put away a certain amount of money and put it in a CD or in a Roth IRA, blah, 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 give us a pathway to be able to get those things. I think it puts us in a much better space.
You mentioned something earlier I want to go back to when you talked about putting this out and getting it approved, but really denied, right? And you put this book out there 147 times. I think about Heinz ketchup, and everybody talks about Heinz 57. And some people don't know that the 57 represents 57 times they tried to get a patent to be put out for ketchup.
Didn't know that either.
Yeah, well, I often tell people that anytime that you taste Heinz 57 ketchup, you're tasting failure, right? You had nearly 2 to 3 times the amount of no's. I mean, was there ever any time that you said, okay, good idea, try to be a motivator, let me put this down, let me forget about it? Was there ever a moment where you said, let's just move on?
No, I'm not built that way. Like once I got the idea for Danny Dollar and once I wrote this manuscript and I saw how powerful it could be, honestly, every rejection only fueled me more to realize that this was something that was really special. I was in the world of sales at the time, and you're taught that every no gets you closer to a yes, even if you have to create the yes yourself. So it was at that 147th rejection that I said, I'm not going to let 147 strangers dictate my success and stifle something that I know is really important. So I started my own self-publishing company, which, it wasn't an easy task, but it wasn't incredibly difficult either. And once I did, about a year later, and my book, Danny Dollar, came out for the first time, it was one of the most important days of my life because it really made me realize that, this knucklehead kid from the Bronx who was born to a 15-year-old mom, whose father had been incarcerated for most of his childhood, was on welfare till I was a teenager, who's never been to college. But if I put my heart and soul and mind to anything, I can accomplish anything. And up to this point, I've sold over 120,000 copies of this book and over 150,000 copies of my books overall. So, I think we don't realize that adversity is part of the game of success. And those 147 rejections were the things that actually catapulted me to be the quality of an entrepreneur that I am. So many people will fold and, like you said, will take their dream and just put it to the side, and just because they didn't get through or didn't get the approval or didn't get the audition or whatever the case is. But it's all part of the process to me. Rejection is part of everything. I'd like to think that I've been relatively successful in so many facets of my life. I've been on numerous television shows, major national television. And just yesterday, I went to an institution and was rejected. And like, it's humbling to like, even though I'm thinking like, quote unquote, I've made it, I've received a doctorate. Like I said, I've never been to college, but I received a doctorate for my work. My books have been featured on CNN and MSNBC, and you can currently see it on Disney Plus on the Steve Harvey Show. And I've had some really great success, and still I'm getting rejected. And you know what? It's the first time I got rejected in a long time. It made me smile. It made me think back to those days when I was a hungry, young, scrappy author trying to get my book out into the world. And it actually made me hungrier. And so I appreciated the rejection. I admire the rejection. We need the rejection. We can't think that, you get on a bike and you start riding it right away. You don't. You skin your knee, you hurt your leg, but you get back up and you persevere. And when you finally do balance that bike, it's so sweet at that time. So yeah, albeit that those 147 rejections may have stung a little bit at the time, it made me more resilient, and it gave me a skill set of creating my own books. And now I don't need a publisher. I am the publisher.
See, that's how you do it. Allan Jackson, our guest here on Perspectives. Going to take a quick break. When we come back after the break, going to talk about financial literacy, what we can find inside Ty's book. He's not going to give it all away because you got to buy it, but we're going to talk about it when we return. All right, be right back. Coming back here on Perspectives, glad to have you with us, Allan Jackson, our guest here, talking about his book. And before the break, Ty, we were talking a little bit about the book. Let's go into the book for a quick second. And for somebody who's opening the book, what are they going to find?
Well, I think what they're going to enjoy is that Danny Dollar is a story-based book. It's not a textbook, and I wanted to make sure that kids, when they read this book, they're reading it for joy and fun, because I think that's the gateway into getting children enthusiastic about reading. So it's based on a story of a young kid who wants to be a millionaire and his pathway to becoming that. But a few things get sabotaged along the way. And like I said before, without a little adversity in life, it's not the victory isn't quite as sweet. So this young kid, Danny Dollar, is on his pathway to becoming a millionaire. He faces some adversity, and within the book, there are just little nuggets of information, like what is debt, what's interest, what's a stock, what's a savings account. But it's all embedded in the story, so it doesn't feel like a textbook. And at the end of every chapter, there's something called a Danny Did You Know, and it teaches kids a little bit about a little trivia about books, like you did with the Heinz 57 teaching me. I didn't know about that thing with the ketchup. Danny teaches a little bit of trivia, like, for example, why we call money bucks. Everyone says, I need $5. Well, that was derived because before there was paper money, that people used to barter animals like deer and elk. What's another name for deer and elk? Bucks. So that's at the end of every chapter, there's a nice little bit of trivia. So it teaches kids as they're reading this really fun, engaging story.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about this for a minute. Not only do you have that book, you've also got another book, and I got to talk about that as well. Share with us a little bit about your second book.
So there's a spinoff of this book. It is titled Make Your Own Money. I'll get that right. There we go. It's called Make Your Own Money, teaching kids how to earn it, save it, spend it, and dream big. And it literally is a step-by-step guide. Unlike my original Danny Dollar, which is a story-based book, this is more of a manual that teaches kids step-by-step, first of all, what is money, and then how to earn it, how to save it, how to spend it, and how to dream bigger in life. Because I think that very often kids are told you can be anything it is that you want to be, but they're not really exactly taught how. So I think this book gives great perspective on what you can do to not only make your own money and to be like the kids when we said before, like, hey, that was my car, you see a Mercedes or something, but here are the steps where you can actually earn that money that you're going to need to be able to get that car or college or home or stock. And so I really am proud of this book, because it's something, it's really a pathway and a manual how kids can make their own money. So really, really proud of it. I'm also proud that this is my first published book. I mentioned before that all of my books have been self-published up to this point. Well, my Danny Dollar book has gotten so popular that a really sizable publishing company reached out to me and asked me to write a spin-off of that book. So this is actually my first published work. So it goes to show, even though I was rejected by 147 agents, if you work hard enough and believe in yourself, sometimes even those ones that said no will turn around and say yes.
Yeah. So what's next for you? I mean, are we going to see you on Shark Tank or what? What's going to happen next?
Actually, I'm now working with a Disney director to get Danny Dollar adapted into a series or movie. We actually are pitching it in a couple of days to a really high, can't exactly say who it is, but we're pitching it to a very large media company. So the objective is to get Danny Dollar, repurposed into different platforms, maybe in a television show or a television series or in a movie, but something to even expand on this concept of entrepreneurship, because it's something that we all need. So that's one of the things I'm working on. Of course, I'm always working on new books and touring the country, talking to children about the power of reading. But yeah, it's a lot of balls in the air right now, but I couldn't be more thrilled.
Does it blow your mind at all that this all started with some lemonade?
You know what? It doesn't, because I think that we all have a purpose inside of us. It's up to us to find that purpose. And generally when we do, I think it propels us to become greater versions of ourselves. I knew I was destined for greatness in something. I didn't know exactly what, but when I found the opportunity of what I could be great in, I dropped everything. I quit my job. I cashed in so much of my savings, and I bet on me, and it's worked out even grander than I anticipated. So when people ask me, am I surprised by this success? The answer is no. I think if you open up a deli, you expect it in 10 years to be Subway. If you open up a pizza shop, in 10 years, you expect it to be Domino's. Nobody takes a risk and then doesn't dream big. And so I did. So I actually foresaw so many of the things that's happening, but I'm really excited to see even where it goes even further.
I'm glad to hear you say that. It's like the basketball players, they ask them in the finals, hey, do you expect to win? What do you think? We're here to win. You know what I'm saying? So I really am encouraged by what you do, and thank you for what you're doing and educating our young people, and really showing that dreams can become realities and beyond that. And so I want to take the time to thank you for being with us here on Perspectives. You got to come back, share more with us, so that way we can be able to get to latch into that. But before I go, I want to let you tell people how they can get the books.
Okay, well, all you have to do is Google or search Ty Allan Jackson or Danny Dollar Millionaire Extraordinaire. You can find all of my work on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, TikTok, you name it, I'm on it. But you could also, of course, visit TyAllanJackson.com to learn more about my advocacy as well as purchase my books.
Ty Allan Jackson, it's been a pleasure and an honor to have you, brother. And I want to let
Thank
you know,
brother.
Gotta get you back on the show. So don't. As things progress, we're gonna bring you back.
Just say when, brother, and I'm here.
All right, Ty Allan Jackson, our guest here on Perspectives, want to thank you. Listen, it's important that we continue to educate our young people, particularly in the area of financial literacy. As I said earlier in the show, that when you look around and you find out other communities, particularly the white community, takes advancement. They do the things necessary so that way their children can get the upper advantage. We need to do the same. And thanks to Ty, that conversation and those resources are readily available. I'm Daren Jaime saying thank you for joining us here on Perspectives. Be sure to share your perspective with somebody else. You just don't know. It might make a difference in somebody else's life. Take care. We'll see you next week.